You're listening to Rise Above, a Rogers Behavioral Health podcast, where we sit down with Rogers experts who are changing the way the world views mental health and addiction. Today, we are talking with Dr. Camila Albuquerque and Dr. Adrianne McCullars about the connection between personality and mood disorders.
Now, the other day, I did an internet search about the connection between mood disorders and personality disorders. And the one thing I noticed was that just about every search result stated something like mood disorders versus personality disorders. So what do you think about that? Why does it seem like everyone is trying to tease them apart and you're trying to put them together?
I mean, I think at times people want to pull them apart and treat one versus the other, because when you say borderline personality disorder, people automatically have this like stigmatized connotation of what that is and what that brings to the table. When you say major depressive disorder, that sounds a little bit more safe. Not to put depression in a nutshell like that or to oversimplify the treatment of depression, but I do think that sometimes providers get a little bit, it halts them a little bit. It scares them a little bit to think about treating somebody with BPD. But if they have depression, we can treat that. Good. So I think that could be a little bit of the why. I do know that, among providers, that's definitely kind of a common thing. The diagnosis and the presentation of BPD can be very off-putting and scary. And I think it speaks to some of the challenges that we talked about in our talk. It requires a lot. It requires a larger approach than maybe some other diagnoses or presentations.
So for a member of the general public, they may hear, I'm thinking about my next door neighbor, right? And they're like, depression, everybody, talks about depression. But what's the difference between depression and mood disorders?
Well, mood disorders is kind of an umbrella term to talk about multiple different diagnoses, one of which is depressive disorder, major depressive disorder, bipolar 1, bipolar 2, cyclothymic disorder. So mood disorders is that umbrella term that's used to encapsulate the more specific diagnoses that underlie underneath it.
Now, you did already talk about personality disorders and acknowledge there is a lot of stigma around them. And there are definitely some misconceptions about these disorders, especially borderline personality disorder, shortened up to BPD. So what do you find are some of the most common misconceptions?
So I think the way the personality pathology is portrayed nowadays in shows and in books, it really brings up the most extreme, and I want to put it out there, right? And if you think about the personality in itself, it can range from a spectrum from having a little bit of symptoms to all the symptoms out here, right? And it's hard for people to take that information on, especially like in the medical field. You're really going to find people not knowing exactly that is. Imagine outside of it, right? So people tend to always look in the mental health pathologies with a negative set of eyes, especially for personality pathology. So I think it's more of that, the spectrum, and understanding that it can range from one end to the other, and there are many ways that we can help that person improve on.
I think that leads me to my next question. What role does medication play in the treatment of mood and personality disorders?
And I think that is for psychiatric pathologies in general. Medications have a good positive role in treatment, but that's not it, right? Sometimes people come with, I want a Tylenol for my headache, and they expect the headache to go away. Unfortunately, with the mental health piece of things, it's not really that way, right? Because we are dealing with brain responses that are physiological in a way. Feeling anxious is physiological. We're only alive because we get anxious, right? Feeling sad, feeling happy, feeling numb, feeling angry. All of those things are physiological. There are responses to daily stress, right? The problem is when those responses or when the anxiety is too much and for too long, right? So what do I do then? If I only give you a medication to bring it down a little bit, maybe temporarily it's going to bring the anxiety down and you're going to feel calmer. But that's not long lasting, right? So I think of medications as It's going to help bring the anxiety or the mood down to a point that's going to allow you to engage in the behavior piece of things. That's going to be long lasting. And that's why I think Rogers is so good. And I'm so happy to be part of it because we work with both together. So when I'm working with the clients here, it's like the medication is going to help you, but it's going to help you do the hard work. Unfortunately, that has to be that way. There has to be effort. There has to be sacrifice. There has to be pain. Medications will make it slightly easier, but it's not going to be the final answer. Yeah,
absolutely. So that truly leads to then what are the strategies for managing these disorders?
I think with the people that we see, most of them are doing the behavioral therapy piece, and then most of them are on medication. Depending on the level of symptoms, some don't have to do the medication route or they don't need that. But I would say 95 to maybe 98% of the people we see really do need some sort of psychopharm intervention to help us. Like we need Dr. Albuquerque because we got to get the symptoms down to a level where behavioral treatments can even be effective. So I think, there's a lot of different things that we can do depending on the presentation, but sometimes without the help of medication, individuals who are at a certain symptom severity level just won't benefit from them because their bodies aren't allowing them to, because they're so like fight or flight all of the time that they couldn't possibly be able to engage in skills because the body is not at a level to be able to do that. If you're being chased by a bear, you're not going to sit down and use deep breathing. Like their bodies are always in that mode that they're being chased by that bear. So like you telling them to calm down and do some deep breathing, that's just not going to help. But the medication can help to show them that they're not being chased by a bear. And so then they're more open and amenable to like using the skills that we can provide them.
I have a feeling that there's more to simply taking a pill, isn't there?
100%. And I think that even in cases where a pill is recommended, which should never be the first thing to jump into. But even in those cases, when there is a clear indication for a medication, I think there's just much more one can do to potentiate that effect, right? Which includes remembering the important role of nutrition. For example, our bodies are capable of doing so much, right? If we provide it with what is needed to produce things, to excrete things, and to do its job in healing, which it happens on a daily basis. So in a simple way of explaining it, right, the production of neurotransmitters, which is what we think about a lot when we're treating psychiatric pathologies, in many more pathologies out there. But if you allow your body to have what's needed for the production of them, it's much more likely that the medications will work better, right? So the way I like to put it is it's like baking a cake. You can want the cake as much as you do, but unless you have what's needed, unless you have egg, milk, flour, you're never going to get that cake, right? So you may be wanting to get better so badly, and you may be taking the medications, but if your body is not working adequately, then you're losing something here. So just thinking about eating regular meals, healthy meals, you're going to be providing your body with what is needed for your healing process, to produce things and to get better.
How could someone support a loved one or a friend with a mood or personality disorder?
I think sometimes just being there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have even to say anything, but just being there to listen and acknowledge and validate the suffering, because we have a hard time accepting it because we can't really see it, right? It's different. And every time a patient is in front of me, we talk about the same things. If you had a big open lesion in your arm and everybody could see it, it's much easier to say, see, I needed to heal, so I need interventions here to help my arm heal. It's different here, but it's the same thing that is happening, right? So sometimes for the family members, just to validate their struggles and be there, supporting, allowing them to come to people that could potentially help, I think that's the best way to go.
And there are a lot of really good books that are out there for loved ones who may also have a family member or a partner or a sibling who are struggling with borderline personality disorder, because it is really helpful for that person to kind of understand the whole presentation as to why their loved one is behaving that way. It could just help make sense of things, which then can help that person draw from empathy and be less angry and maybe be less volatile or mad. at that loved one for being the way that they are once they're able to read a little bit and understand more about the why behind the presentation.
And finally, what is one key takeaway message that you would like people to know about mood and personality disorders?
I think, you may Google it and things try to separate the two, but really when you're dealing with these individuals, you can't just forget about one and treat the other one. If you have an individual with borderline personality disorder and also co-occurring depression, you cannot just treat that depression. You have to address the personality component. And we know that that will help the depression alleviate over the course of time. But if you just treat the depression, the borderline symptoms, which are that primary piece of the puzzle, is not going to get better.
Dr. A?
So same thing, more than trying to separate them or coming up with a final name for the pathology is more of being open and accepting that more likely they're coming together. And most of the times, not only both of those pathologies, but even extra ones, right? So what can I do to help this person with everything else that they're bringing to me? All the struggles and all the environmental and cultural and family and, so I think it's more plugging things together rather than pulling them apart.
Agreed.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for taking the time to talk with me.
Thanks for listening to Rise Above, a podcast from Rogers Behavioral Health. Be sure to like and subscribe to be notified of new episodes. As always, if you or someone you care about is struggling with a mental health or substance use disorder, visit rogersbh.org for a free mental health screening.